Hi everybody, my name is Gregory Kurtzer. I am the founder of Rocky Linux, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project, about the history of the project, how we got here, as well as what we're going to be doing with the project and what the future holds. So I think it's a good idea to start off talking about Rocky with a little bit of history about CentOS. And that starts from another project called Chaos Linux. So Chaos stood for Community Assembled Operating System, and the goal of Chaos was to create a community-maintained RPM-based distribution of Linux. And that project started in about 2002. And we were well on our way building this operating system when Red Hat changed their operating system model. At that point, they had something called Red Hat Linux, and it was freely available. Everybody had the ability to use this. And they end-of-lifed multiple versions of Red Hat Linux pretty much without any warning and pivoted it to the product that we all know today, which is Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So we, as you know, another group of people building a Linux distribution, realized that it might be possible for us to rebuild Red Hat Enterprise Linux very easily by throwing those source RPMs at our build system and create a clone, in a matter of speaking, of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And that was what we did. And it was released in May of 2004, about 17 years ago. And CentOS has been going pretty strong ever since. It had some ups and downs as the project, and the people within the project, had lives to live and whatnot. But the project went very well. About a number of years ago, I think in 2014, Red Hat announced that they were going to sponsor the project, which kind of meant that they hired a bunch of the CentOS development team, and Red Hat took over the project. And that was going, again, fairly well for quite some time. Now I'm going to jump to another part of the story, which is what I've been doing. So we're just building our company right now. And this is a company as we're creating a next generation of high-performance computing, something I think this group might be very interested in. And when all of a sudden, out of pretty much nowhere, we get this message from Rich on the Red Hat and CentOS team. And it was about CentOS kind of shifting focus and changing what CentOS kind of is to everybody and moving that to something called CentOS Stream. Now, you can see a lot of the comments that I just picked out here were fairly negative. A lot of people didn't like the fact that this is shifting, and that's because that CentOS Stream is not CentOS. There's possibly some good debate about this that I'd be happy to have with people. But CentOS started off being a community enterprise operating system. That was why it has a large amount of usage. That's why people in the enterprise are using it considerably. That's why it accounts for more than 20 to 25% of all the installed enterprise server hardware across the world. So all of a sudden, it pivoted. It changed. And the notion of where it changed to is to something called CentOS Stream. Now, I want to be very clear about this. I think CentOS Stream is a fantastic idea. I usually just call it Stream because the notion of it being CentOS Stream kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit, to be honest. CentOS specifically stands for Community Enterprise Operating System. And Stream, well, it's kind of a beta. So the two things don't really go together. And what we saw is that CentOS was kind of end-of-lifed, and CentOS Stream took over. All right? Some people in Red Hat, I've even heard Red Hat describe CentOS Stream as being a nightly build, a beta, and whatnot. All things that are not enterprise. But I want to be very clear again. I think CentOS Stream is a great idea. I think the idea of providing developers and partners the ability to chime in and help with the development of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, I think is a fantastic idea. But that's not CentOS. Not CentOS, at least in my mind, and not CentOS of the past 15 years of legacy and expectations and use cases of people using CentOS. It's something different. Kind of wish they dropped the name CentOS because it's not a community enterprise operating system anymore. But that's beside the fact. So when that announcement came out from Red Hat and CentOS, I responded to that with something that I've been thinking about for a little while now, which is maybe we want to build a new operating system here. Maybe we want to redo CentOS. And if I would have known that this was going to get so much attention, I probably would have written something that was a little bit more better, something that sounds a little bit better, something that makes me sound smarter or something like that. But no, this is pretty simple. It's pretty basic. And I basically just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing another rebuild of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. If you're interested, come on over here to this Slack for HPCNG. Come over to the Slack and join me, and let's talk about it. That was the beginning of Rocky Linux. Now, at this point, I think it's important to talk a little bit about what I was thinking when I first said that. And if you go back, you'll even see, right, that I may even be able to hire some people for this effort. And that's because I was thinking of doing this through my company and creating a project, an open source project through the company. But I watched the community respond to what just happened. And it became clear that putting this into another company is not the right move. This would have a negative effect in terms of what everybody just experienced. And what we really need is not another corporate-driven open source project. What we really need is a community to build this and to maintain this and to create confidence and stability of this open source project. And there's always the issues when putting it in with a company, right? You've got conflict of interest, you got corporate agendas, you have stakeholders and whatnot that are not necessarily the community. And we just saw this happen with CentOS. So wanted to think of how to do this differently. And putting this outside of the company was a really important aspect of this. And when I saw how much this is needed, it was a very easy decision to move this outside of my company, CIQ. And we don't want to own it. We didn't want to control it. But the one thing we did say is, well, if you ever need any help, we're here to help. We're here. So give us a call. And that's it. That's our business model. So that's basically what we did. Now, when we put this into the community, we had a couple kind of ideas in terms of values that were important, some goals. The first one was compatibility. It's really important for us and to the community, as well as vendors, and even to the upstream enterprise Linux distribution, that we become and we maintain this as a bug-for-bug compatible version of this upstream standard. So compatibility, incredibly important. Community. Obviously, this whole thing, as I was just saying, is more about the community than a corporate agenda. So we put every aspect of this in the leadership in the community control. Rocky Linux is 100% by the community, for the community. And we've opened every single thing up about it. You can find our build tools. You can find all the scripts we're using, all of the code that we're using to create it. Somebody else could literally come and recreate exactly what we've done. And that's part of our goal, because we want to create confidence. We're going to create that confidence by not only being free from any corporate agenda, again, not beholden to any single company, but rather working with a lot of companies and a lot of people to make sure that Rocky Linux is absolutely immutable to negative influence. What's happened with CentOS can never happen here with Rocky, and that's our goal. And of course, we want to be open and transparent. This is what I was referring to regarding our build tools, our Git sources, even the infrastructure. Everything is transparent. You can see what it is we're doing. The only place where we hide things is when we're talking about secrets and securing those secrets. These are secrets like cryptographic signing keys. Everything else is completely open. And then lastly, we want to take this stable base and we want to extend this. And we want to figure out what is the best way that we can involve more people into this community with special interest groups. We're going to add additional functionality and whatnot, all to extend not only Rocky Linux, but all of the enterprise Linux based distributions. So from the point when we did this, and I gave you that, I posted that comment on the blog, we had about 60 million global impressions of people writing about this, and we had some people in marketing and PR that were tracking all of this, and it just took off. In a mere 2 months, we had 60 million people watching what it is that we're doing. Our Slack grew to over 10,000 messages, and those of you that are familiar with Slack may know that the free tier of Slack has a limit of 10,000 messages. So if you've got 10,000 members all trying to talk and say, how can I help? How can we be part of this? And you're only allowing 10,000 messages in your ring buffer, well, very quickly things are going to get lost. So we ended up not being able to afford Slack for 10,000 people, which is a very large amount of money. We ended up moving to a solution called Mattermost. And very quickly, again, we kind of ramped up on that, and we're now well over 5,000 people, and we are rebuilding and are expanding our infrastructure now to be able to support up to 10,000 people over there. And these are just individuals that are asking to help, that are trying to be part of this. Everything from developers to testers to translation people to documentation to, did I say translation people? Wow, that was funny. But a whole lot of people trying to figure out and trying to help and be part of this project. But it's more than just people. We also have a number of corporate sponsors and partners that have agreed to join up. And you're going to see here, you're going to see some of the major clouds. You're going to see people that have, all these organizations that have a really big interest in terms of what it is we're doing. We also have a number more of this coming soon. So we've got discussions going on with all of the clouds. We've got discussions going on with hardware vendors. We've got discussions going on with ISVs, IHVs, as well as lots of users and consumers. So you can imagine this community is more than just individuals. It's a community of enterprises and organizations that are also taking part in ensuring that this is going to be a long-lived, stable successor to CentOS and even become more. So an interesting question arises in my head, which is, well, with all these people and all these organizations standing behind this, what took so long? Well, I'd respond to that and say priorities. If the only thing we were trying to do was just create a rebuild of CentOS, I do believe we could have done that in fairly short order. But that wasn't the first problem that we wanted to solve. And this is because CentOS, if you look back over the years, has always been a fairly small community. And that has to do with the fact that the infrastructure and the technology, even at the time, going way back then, didn't really allow for having a large amount of people being part of it. So to manage things like our secrets, those cryptographic signing keys and the trust of what it is we're doing with that operating system and how we're building it, we had to keep a relatively tight circle of developers. So the first thing that we really wanted to do was to ensure that we don't get stuck in that again. And that instead, we're going to create this very differently. We're going to create an infrastructure initially that is capable of supporting a large number of developers and contributors and collaborators, and manage the necessary security components within that infrastructure such that we can securely and safely allow a big community of people to take part on this. And then, of course, open it up even bigger. Now, it took us about 4-ish months to complete that infrastructure. And once that infrastructure was done, we started throwing in all of this, the source RPMs and everything to the system. And it took us about 2 months to build the operating system. And when we've been founded, it's been, obviously we can do simple math. It's been about 6 months since we started on this initiative, maybe a little bit more now. And that's about how long it took us to build this. So that's what's taking so long. And if we look at this build infrastructure, we're using the same build infrastructure that Fedora and CentOS use today. So this gives us the ability to build compatible versions of the operating system because we're starting with a compatible build system. And we're using things like Koji and the whole suite of infrastructure tools that again, Fedora and CentOS are using today. We developed some orchestration systems to help us manage a lot of these builds. One of these is called distro build, and you can see an interface of this here. And just like what I said before, everything that we're building and everything that we're doing, we are in fact open sourcing. And you can see the distro build project being hosted here on GitHub under an MIT license. We tend to choose non-copyleft licenses when we can. So you're going to see, MIT, and generally we standardize on between MIT and BSD3. So as I mentioned, it took us about 6 months to get the release candidate out there. And once the release candidate was out there, once it was released, in about 48 hours, we had more than 20,000 downloads and installs. And this is an accurate number because, well, we have logs of that because everybody at this point was hitting our tier 0 mirror. Well, a couple weeks later, we had more than 100,000 downloads and installs. And we're basing that on the continued growth from our tier 0 mirror, plus understanding how many mirrors we had out there in the community, and we assembled a nice swag based on that. And since it's been released, which has now been over a month, we do believe with high confidence that we've had about 250,000 downloads. It's very difficult for us to make these counts because we don't have any trackers in there. We're not tracking people's downloads. We can see the logs on our own servers, but we can't track it anywhere else, obviously. So this is a guess, but we do feel that this is a pretty confident guess at this point. So this comes to the big question. When is Rocky Linux going to be released as stable? And the answer is today. Actually, it probably was if all of our timing and everything worked out right, knowing that this is a recording, so I'm knocking on wood right now, it should have been released half an hour ago. And this is a huge release. This is a huge amount of work that has gone into this. We have a very large community. We have a lot of people that are contributing to this, a lot of organizations that are contributing to this to make this all happen. So this is the fact that this mini conference is happening on this day is actually very cool. So I'm very happy to announce, and this is probably the first announcement of it, at least in voice and conference, that Rocky Linux has been released. And I've had several media sources come and tell me that this is one of the most anticipated software releases of this year, and it is now here. So please join me in thanking everyone from the Rocky Linux community for making this and bringing this forth. Again, this is a huge feat, and we're super excited to be able to bring this to completion. Well, I guess it's the beginning. So what's happening next? What are we doing in the future? Well, obviously, we now have a GA operating system that we have to be maintaining. So that's going to be obviously a big thing. We're putting a lot of priority in terms of release updates and cadence, and part of that infrastructure that we built up automatically is going to be pulling those releases and staging everything for builds. So it'll be very easy for us to manage those builds. We're also going to be having community events and being a little bit more proactive with engagement in the community, doing talks, doing presentations, having brown bags get-togethers, all of those sorts of things. Well, virtual get-togethers. Special interest groups, for example, we have a high-performance computing special interest group, and of course I have a big passion in high-performance computing as well. So we're going to have special interest groups, but they're going to range a variety of different topics. We have everything from embedded to legacy to hyperscale to EDA and so on and so forth. And I absolutely consider that we're going to be bringing in support for OpenHPC in these special interest groups. So I'm hoping that the ability to install an OpenHPC stack on top of Rocky will be pretty much transparent and super simple. We're also looking at doing updating the build infrastructure a little bit and offering some feedback and some capabilities back to the community in terms of cloud native optimizations. As we built the predominance of well, not predominance, everything of Rocky up in cloud, the build infrastructure that we're currently using is not very cloud friendly, so we're hoping to add some features there and some capabilities there to make it a little bit more cloud friendly. And then adding value, right? We are a community and we're part of a bigger community. So we want to be able to add value to the upstream sources of Fedora as well as Stream. And this last one is a big one. We have been getting requests for FIPS from many, many different angles, and we have organizations now that are going to be helping us to do this, and we have commitment at this point. It will take a while. The FIPS process is something that is not quick, so it definitely will take a while. But we are hoping to see, I don't want to give a timeline on this yet, but know that it'll take a while. And at the same token, we are expecting to have full FIPS compliance, or FIPS 142, maybe even 143, in the, I'd say, not so near, but not totally distant future either. And I realize I totally didn't answer that, but just wanted to put that on the radar that is happening, and I do want people to reach out if they have interest in being part of that and helping. So that's everything I got about Rocky, and I'm looking forward to answering a lot of questions about this. So thank you very much, and bye.